Hello and welcome to another episode of Pakistonomy. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about Airlift, a mass transit startup that has made a tremendous difference when it comes to the provision of urban mobility services to Pakistanis. It has also catalyzed growth in Pakistan's startup ecosystem, recently raising $10 million dollars in a funding round. To talk about the startup and where it is headed, I have with me Sabah Abid, who is the general manager at Airlift. Sabah, welcome to Pakistonomy.
Hi there, how are you doing? Thanks for having me.
I'm good, and I was it's interesting the electricity went out, so I hope our connection stays solid throughout this conversation. But I want to start off with, learning more about Airlift, what the mission is of the company, and what issues is the startup trying to solve for in Pakistan.
Sure. Our mission is basically to change through technology how people kind of live their lives, right? That started with us venturing into the mobility space because there was a huge gap. I think anyone who's kind of grown up in Pakistan knows that transport has been a pain point, especially for women. It actually started with an idea to facilitate women from going to work and kind of things like that to help with women empowerment. But then, as the idea kind of matured, men started speaking up and said, like, listen, it's not like we have, other options or we have facilities. So it kind of became like a mass transit system that, that's kind of how it's shaped, right? The idea. Um, growing up in Pakistan, it's always been quite an issue for people to get to work because the public transport over here is often like very, very overly crowded. There are no assigned bus stops. There's like no place that you can check routes. It's pretty informal, and a lot of times, it's kind of a place where you kind of don't feel very secure, right? You can get pickpocketed. There are harassment issues, all sorts of problems. That's kind of the problem we were trying to solve with transit is to get people to schools, to get to people to their workplaces in a safe and secure way. But I think the general vision, when you talk about it, or the mission of the company, is generally to transform how Pakistanis, and we do hope to kind of expand out of Pakistan as well at some point. But how people can use technology to change how they live. And then now we've just ventured into groceries, and that has kind of came into kind of being right after COVID. We realized, like, a lot of people were putting themselves at risk by just doing very, very basic things like grocery shopping. And when we looked at the market, there are many, many competitors and many people doing online grocery, but we thought there was a gap about like how people were doing providing this service. There were many pain points that customers pointed to. So we kind of built a model that was addressing those pain points that we just launched day before yesterday.
No, that's great, and I want to talk more about grocery, the vision around grocery as well. But you're right, right? In transportation in Pakistan, it's not a fun activity, especially in an urban city like Karachi, where we often see pictures of people hanging by a thread on a bus or sitting on its roof and going to work. And essentially, if you look at how productive people are, you're not going to be that productive at work or have a great day if you've gone through that experience. And then when you're going home, it's the same. You're not going to be that tuned into home when you've had that experience. So it is providing that respectable, comfortable ride that a person takes day in, day out. And in fact, a lot of people do need that because not everyone can afford Kareem. I was looking at the Pakistan Bureau of Statistics data, and even the richest quintile of Pakistani households make on average about 75,000 rupees, right? Which is, you can't afford Kareem at that level to take it every single day to come and go to work. Um, so who is the typical customer for Airlift, and what is their journey like in terms of how do they use your service? Do they pay by cash? Do they make reservations? And what is the typical profile or demographic of that consumer?
Yeah. So I'll first talk about the demographic and the profile, and we'll move towards like the user journey, right? So I think the typical kind of customer is either a university student, and we kind of found that we didn't realize we had so many university students on our platform until like there was the shutdown for universities, where
Hmm.
workplaces were open and universities were shut when there was the first case of corona in Karachi, and we saw our utilization fall, to half. And we were quite surprised because we thought we were serving like people going to work, and then we realized that no, we were half of our customers were actually students. So
Hmm.
that was, I think, something that was surprising to us. The second thing is like the other half, like I mentioned, are mostly office kind of going, salaried professionals that are going to work day in, day out. So we can see that very clearly with the routes that we make and the routes that do well. Um, they kind of generally come from like the high density areas in Karachi, and they go towards, and I'm talking about the morning route, and they go towards, the central business districts, which is like I Chandriga Road or M.A. Jinnah Road, or M.T. Khan Road, or, things like that. So, that's who we're serving right now. But I think in terms of the user journey, generally what people have to do, so we don't accept cash actually for Airlift. It's
Hmm.
a totally digital kind of payment platform. We have, you can do it by bank transfer, credit cards, or like Easy Pesa and Jazz Cash. So people are generally paying through those mediums. And the way it works is, you kind of put in your location. Like, for example, you want to go from home to work. So you put in your home location, you put in your work location, and it kind of then sees like, so they're pre kind of determined routes, right? There won't be like Kareem that, something will come to your house and pick you. So it's basically going to see within, the area that you've said, like what's the closest walk to your stop, and then
Hmm.
the times at the stop, and it's going to take you closest location to your workplace, right? So everything is kind of predetermined. And generally we try to make it in a way that we are kind of covering most areas of Karachi and most kind of office places as well, and we've tried to make our routes in a way where we kind of have an understanding of when people are going to work and when they're coming back. So we do it according to that, and that's kind of how the user can make their bookings. They can make their booking for up to a week. First, it used to be you had to make a booking daily, and then like we got a lot of customer feedback that kind of making the same booking every day was a little redundant. So we just have launched weekly bookings. You can book multiple people. You can say like I want 3 seats on the bus and things like that, and the payment is taken at that point. You can cancel, but yeah.
And so in that instance, right, you probably need a lot of predictive modeling to make sure the timings are right and people are getting to where they need to be and they're not waiting. So are you using, what kind of innovations are you guys using to make sure that that part, the underlying infrastructure technology within the app that maps routes and times things properly, how is that taken care of?
So we have a great technology team that we do that in house. First, we used to kind of depend on Google. It wasn't working out, like, because like you can imagine if you're trying to go to work and you have a scheduled time for like it's gonna come pick you up at 7:30 a.m. and you're late by 20 minutes every day and you're waiting, especially in Karachi. People don't like standing on the street with their laptops and their phones and their wallets. Also, it's hot. So I think so the delays was something that we try to kind of minimize. I think that was our kind of like what we call like P0, our first priority. So we did that in-house. We kind of used different kind of metrics. We used our historical data to figure that out, and we actually got our delays to like significantly lower levels. We haven't been operating since March because that's when COVID kind of blew up in Pakistan, and still is on the rise. So we haven't really resumed our services, but by March, our delays were, I don't actually remember the exact percentage, but they were, very, like, it was a marked difference when we started using our own technology.
And that's great, right? That was actually the reason for my question, was to highlight the fact that there is a lot of homegrown technology and innovation that is occurring as part of this app's growth or the startup's growth. And that's important to recognize, because at the end of the day, Google, starting off with Google is great, but we need homegrown solutions and we need technologists within Pakistan who understand Pakistan's urban landscape to build solutions for that landscape. And that is a great thing that's happening as part of Airlift's growth. besides Karachi, what cities are you guys in? And then I want to transition a bit towards the grocery side of the business as well. And what plans do you have for growth on both the transportation and the grocery side of the business in the coming months? I know with COVID, things are up in the air. Maybe grocery will see accelerated growth in the coming weeks. But in general terms, what is the strategic vision for growth of the company?
Yeah. So, like going forward, I mean, I think we remain super, super excited about transit because, as I highlighted before, it is something that, we think that there's a major gap, right? Like, and there's a need in the market that we were fulfilling. But like you said, like because of COVID, schools are off, universities are off, people are generally working from home, and even if people are going to work, we think it's probably not best for them to sit in a bus and go. And then there's all these SOPs where the government, where you have to have like 50% capacity and so on. So it's not that like, and then, sometimes there is a lockdown and then the lockdown gets lifted and then you're like, okay, should I resume or is there going to be a lockdown
And
again? So I think
there's
there's
a
just too
smart
much.
lockdown in certain neighborhoods,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah. So you have no idea, right? Like because in the sense, like with transit, it's a pretty large operation, I would say, right? Like you have to go and you have to get these bus people, like contracts with them, and you have to kind of have them. We don't own the buses, but we don't want to disrupt them for 2 weeks wherever they're kind of working. Bring them onto our platform, and then after 2 weeks, say like, listen, it's not working out, right? So we want to make a very kind of educated decision, like a smart decision on when to resume. So we see that kind of happening. I think it's like anyone's guess, right? Like when COVID is going to end. But I think, we think like maybe in the next 6 months, we can see something changing. Maybe there'll be a vaccine. Maybe we'll all just be used to it, or I don't know. But I just think like, in the next 6 months, there will have to be some kind of stability in the world globally. Like, I don't think this is about Pakistan. Globally, we'll have to figure something out. I think that's when we kind of see ourselves resuming with transit. And the way we want to like grow with transit is right now, like I think you asked which cities we're operating in. So we started in Lahore, and then we came to Karachi after 4 months of operations in Lahore, I think. So right now we're just in Lahore and Karachi for transit. And, our plans were to kind of go to especially the big cities, that are there in Pakistan. I mean, Karachi and Lahore are the biggest, but there are lots of other cities that are booming, industries, and there's a lot of population there, and there's definitely a need for mass transit over there as well. So we were planning on kind of figuring out where to go next within Pakistan. For grocery, I think same story. I think grocery, obviously, like COVID is kind of like a boomer for online grocery, but we do think that even when COVID ends, right? Like for example, like I'm working, I don't have time to go to the grocery store. I would much rather just come home and not stop at the grocery store and be able to cook my dinner, right? So I think the need is not just for COVID. I think it's a true need, and other countries have kind of proven that that's like a great business to be in. So we kind of see grocery kind of taking off, but we definitely think like the bigger gap is transit, right? For grocery, I think the next markets, we're not sure. Karachi is definitely one of the main contenders because we already have a setup here. We have a small team. The head office is in Lahore for Airlift. So we started in Lahore.
So that's great in terms of, groceries and what you have the vision. The one question I had on grocery was, is this going to be essential items that you're going to initially have part of your catalog, or is this going to be fresh and vegetables as well? Because I know from my own experience that doing quality control on the fresh and vegetable side is at times very difficult, particularly as you scale. So how are you going to be starting off in terms of what you're going to offer to your consumer or to your customer in terms of the catalog of the products?
So right now we don't have any fresh produce, no fruits, no vegetables. We are just kind of doing essential, what we call essential categories that are not fresh, right? Like, so those include, your cooking essentials, your beverages, your breakfast items, like anything, you expect at a grocery store. But we do plan on expanding these things. Like, I think kids are home. I think, people would be willing to buy stationery, toys. People would be willing to buy, something as basic as a glass, glasses. Because I think, from running your own home, you can see, like, when you stop kind of going outside, you stop going to shopping malls and so on. There are many needs that kind of start piling up, especially for your kitchen and the basic home items. So I think we'll kind of continue to add those kind of categories.
Yeah, I can't remember the number of times I've ordered things like kitchen rolls and soap and all sorts of random things from Amazon just because I didn't have them, and I woke up and I realized, okay, I need to order something on Fresh because I'm too busy or too lazy to go out, particularly in COVID times where it's more about safety. So I think that will see a lot of growth and uptake. And I'm guessing even there you're not going to be doing cash. It's going to be all digital. I hope so, because I think that's where the country should head. But curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so for actually right now, because of kind of, we've launched with cash. Actually, I was just gonna, you were speaking and I thought of another thing. So I think one of our biggest and largest value propositions for grocery is not just online grocery, right? We're delivering it in like 45 minutes. So I think that's where we think we'll disrupt the market, right? Because there isn't any other player that delivers any items really quickly. So when you, for example, you run out of soap and you order it, you don't want it the next day, or you don't want it like 5 days later. Like, in our
Mhm.
research, when we were looking through different online stores, some were even saying, like, we can't tell you when we're going to deliver your groceries, right? So because things are delayed due to COVID. So I think that's where so our 45-minute value proposition is, I think, something that's unique to the market. Cash, we have started with cash on delivery. We are introducing other payment mechanisms, like credit card, and Easy Pesa, Jazz Cash, and then we're also going to probably going to bank transfers and so on, just because not everybody in Pakistan has credit and debit cards, so we have to be mindful of that. But we right now we haven't just made a decision whether we're going to pull cash on delivery. I think the main kind of there isn't like that much of a reason for it. It's just that, like, when we were even running transit, that was always a question. Like, we always used to think, like, what if we started accepting cash, right? Are we going to see our growth double? Like, is this something that we're just kind of holding ourselves back by saying we're not going to collect it? The main thing when transit is, then if you're collecting cash in a bus, that's a little tricky. Then you have a conductor, or then you don't have change and things like that. Like, to manage that in buses, to manage it with delivering things at people's homes is a little easier. uh,
Yeah.
so I think that's kind of the difference between the two models.
Got it. And I mean, I guess with delivery as well, people want to pay tips, and so cash at times may actually be more convenient for people at home. But I think that space needs to be disrupted, and the 45-minute time, I think, will definitely change things up, because I agree with you. When someone orders soap or a glass or whatever, they probably need it at that point in time, or they need it before they're hosting someone or someone is coming over. So I think that will change things in the country as you expand. Speaking of the fact that many people don't have access to credit cards or bank accounts in Pakistan, what are some of the challenges that you've seen Airlift face in the country? Of course, COVID is one, but I mean challenges not only in terms of government policy, which at times can be huge, but just in general of operating in the Pakistani market.
Yeah. I mean, some of the challenges, I mean, I think the government has been largely super supportive of us. I don't think at any point we've run into a huge challenge because of the government. I think they've generally been super supportive. And I think, the challenges of working, one, I think is a lot of times, when you're a startup, you have to move very fast, right? It's almost existential. Like if you don't do things right, people are going to try you once, they're going to try you twice, and they kind of then leave you, because you don't have a brand, you're not kind of, established player in the market or so on. So we've, a lot of times struggled with matching our, trying to get our partners, like, for example, if we're working with an X company to deliver something, we just feel like our timelines can be like super aggressive compared to what they expect. And a lot of times we find ourselves in positions where, we're kind of getting slowed down almost, right? Because, like, I guess, the general, maybe sometimes the speed at which established companies are doing things is much slower. But I think that's a global problem. I don't think that's Pakistan specific. It's just the startup space just works at a different velocity, generally. So I think that's one of the kind of the challenges of being with the startup. And the second thing is, I think, uh, I think I'm making it this less Pakistan specific, because honestly, I don't think there have been many challenges that are very specific to Pakistan. You can say one or two things like security, like, we've kind of always struggled and wanted to kind of, we've always, I mean, at least like, because I've been managing Karachi, so I always like wish that Karachi was safer, and I don't have to worry about one day my, bus getting held up or something of that sort. I think that's kind of, I would say, the only Pakistan specific challenge that I
Or
would
I would say
say.
that's a Karachi specific challenge mostly, right?
Karachi.
Like,
Because even
mm,
when I talk to the team in Lahore, they're like, I can't believe you have to think about this, kind of a thing.
yeah.
So I think that's a very Karachi specific challenge. But I think the challenges of being in a startup, the other thing is, I think, recruitment, right? Because your team is so important, right? Because that's like what's going to make or break your business. So I think finding, just finding the right people. And there's almost like, you can have a very, so I think that's, with the right level of being like mission driven, hardworking, and like, eager to learn, because that's all what a startup is about. So I think that's another thing that's super super challenging, and yeah.
It's interesting you bring up recruiting, and following up on that, like what I've seen, I mean, it happened a while ago in the US, but it's now happened in India and Bangladesh and other emerging market startup ecosystems, is that younger people now have shifted away from, initially it used to be a comfortable white collar job at an MNC would be the desired thing, right? Culturally speaking, for young grads coming out of top universities. Um, but now it's shifted where young grads either look to start their own companies or they want to join someone like Airlift or an emerging startup that's doing well, because they want the high pace, high growth type of environment. Have you seen that shift happen in Pakistan as well, where more and more younger people are looking at startups and saying, wait a minute, I actually don't want to go to your typical Unilever or Angro. Actually, if I had a choice, I would go to an Airlift or a Kareem.
Right? Like, so any kind of new graduates that are coming out, a lot of times these FMCGs and these, highly desired companies, for like, from the time when I graduated, that's not even on their radar. They're looking at, Airlift, they're looking at Cheetah, they're looking at Golutlo, they're looking at places where they can kind of get an opportunity. Kareem is now not exactly that much of a startup, but it's
Yeah,
quite
they
big now.
got
But
acquired by Uber, so it's changed. Yeah.
yeah, but I think like that's where we're seeing a lot of interest, and just to further kind of confirm this, is that we've had people from these FMCGs leave their jobs and come to us, right? So I think that itself is kind of a proof of the shifting kind of idea of what a good job is, or a good career path is, so as to say. Yeah.
So speaking of, and it's a good segue into the second part of our conversation that I want to dive into, is about becoming an entrepreneur or joining a company like Airlift, which is quite entrepreneurial and young. What are some things in your experience that you would recommend younger folks either looking to join an Airlift or looking to start up their own venture should be mindful of as they begin this journey? Because clearly an FMCG will give you a career development path, and there will be bureaucracy and HR processes, etc., that will handhold you. Doesn't happen in startups. Startups are high impact, high velocity jobs. So what would you advise these younger people as they look towards an airlift or another startup in the country, or maybe even start their own thing?
Yeah. So I think there's just some general kind of values and general kind of themes to follow, right? If you want to be successful, either at a startup or starting your own, kind of business. So I think one of them is to be like, we call it like bias to action, right? It's just like, I think we've all had like $1 million idea, right? And even at Airlift, there's many instances where someone says like, okay, it would be great if this thing happened. And that's like not valuable at all, right? Like someone like just
Mm.
saying something, or someone giving an idea, like everybody kind of has an general idea of what would be great if it happened, right? So we kind of emphasize on getting it done, right? Like even if you can't do it yourself, kind of mobilizing a team, or kind of leading that change. And that can be there if you even have your own startup, or if you're working for a startup like Airlift. Like, for example, if I feel like we should bring in these XYZ categories, like saying that, let's do it. I think uh, what is expected at Airlift is that then you contact all the different people within your organization, outside your organization, that can make it happen, and you channelize that. And I think that's what we kind of feel is what leaders do, right? So I think that's one of the major things. And the second thing I would say is that, just be like a total sponge, right? Like, I think this having the humility and understanding that even if you're super successful, you don't know anything, right? I think having that kind of attitude where you're constantly learning, you don't get too bogged down by your mistakes, because you're going to make mistakes, and it's okay, right? I think that's especially like something when I've always worked at kind of larger organizations before I moved to Airlift, and generally over there you had more time, you were more kind of conscious of doing your work very, very properly. And at Airlift, like, you have 1 hour to do something that you maybe had like 2 days to do at an FMCG or something of that sort, right? So a lot of times, you something happens, or you're not able to do your best, or whatever it is, right? Or someone's pressurizing you to get it done, and you're not being able to get it done. I think there have been many instances, but I think what I've learned from being at a startup is like, just like keep learning. Just think, okay, next time what could I have done to make it better, rather than kind of feel you failed or something of that sort. I think another thing that's really, really important is relentlessness, right? Like, I think one of the kind of main things that got Airlift to work is basically kind of breaking all barriers, right? Somebody says no, like, you can't do this, like, okay, but like, initially I was tasked like for a grocer to form the entire like merchandise, right? Like all the items that we were going to
Hmm.
sell. And when, I was like, I just kind of thought about it. I was like, how am I going to populate like thousands of items? Like, it just makes no sense. And initially I was like, okay, maybe we should hire somebody. But, once you start kind of get on that journey, you figure it out. You involve the right partners. You say, okay, I need this resource. So I think kind of having that kind of relentlessness and knowing that you will make it work. I think that kind of belief in yourself, that's very important. But obviously being open to feedback as well.
Yeah, I think pro tip for anyone listening and who may find themselves being interviewed by Sabha at Airlift: if you have an idea about what Airlift should do, also pitch a proposal on what the project plan looks like, and what you may be willing to do on day one in terms of running with the thing might get you a job. But I think that's a very important thing, right? That you need to think through, be relentless, and in many ways problem solve, right? And break it down into smaller chunks and say, okay, I have a big thing, but how can I take it into bite-sized chunks and move with it? And sometimes you may actually not make progress because you thought of it a different way. But if you're willing to learn and ask people and involve them, then it can only accelerate your own growth, but also the growth of the business that you're part of. From your personal experience, again, working in a startup, where does Pakistan startup ecosystem go from here? How excited are you about where it is? And what are some areas where it needs to improve on? Because like from my vantage point, again, it is still an ecosystem that is maturing. It has a long way to go to catch up, even among peer economies. And part of the success criteria for any ecosystem, right, is the cluster and the people that make up the entire ecosystem and how they collaborate. So just curious to hear your thoughts around where the ecosystem is from your vantage point and where do you see it going?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think it's at its early stages, right? If we compare it to globally, like the funding that comes into Pakistani companies is much smaller, than it's going into like a lot of other countries. So that's totally there. And I think one of the main things is like, I think even when we were getting investments into Airlift, I mean, first round capital was like kind of the one who was leading the round, the first round. And it was we know them and we were talking to them. And I think one of the partners was like, when I pitched that, okay, I want to invest in this company in Pakistan, everybody asked like, you couldn't find anything else, like, why Pakistan, right? So I think
Yeah.
there's that there's kind of that question, right? Like, why would you? So I think that's going to change once we have a few success cases. We're going to be able to put it on the map. And I think we're going to answer the question of why Pakistan, right? I think that's what we need to do. We need to prove that, you don't have to. I think a lot of Pakistanis actually have very successful startups, but they're not in Pakistan. Uh, you know, you have Keep Trucking, Kareem was half Pakistani, this and all of that. So I think, there haven't been so many in like, homegrown kind of startups that have really reached global kind of, fame or expansion. So I think that would help our case. And I think in that way, we're still at very early stages, but I definitely see, you can see like there's some funding coming in. I mean, there's COVID right now, but there's still some funding coming in. And I think, like you said, like as, people make up the actual kind of, it's the kind of people that startups are going to attract, right? So if you get the highest caliber, high potential people working, I think we'll see a turnaround really quickly.
Yeah, and I think it's exciting, right? Because as you said, like for someone who's not familiar with Pakistan, they may say, "Why have you gone all the way out into the wild west of startups and found me this investment opportunity?" But that is a huge opportunity too, right? And one of the things I tell people who are not familiar with Pakistan, I'm like, "Well, look at all the big FMCG companies. They've all done phenomenally well in Pakistan, and they've been here for a number of years. So that is a case in point about the market and the fact that it has a lot of potential. And I think startups will catch up and grow. And Airlift is leading that charge in many ways, and hope and to see it succeed even in the grocery business. And once COVID is over, see the transportation side of things move, because I think that is so important to the overall economy. If you can move people efficiently, make sure they're productive at home, make sure they're productive at work, and their experience and journey day in day out is not as inconvenient as it often is, the whole economy benefits. So wish you all the best. Thank you for taking out the time. This was a great discussion, and we'll be in touch soon again.
Thank you so much, Uzair. Thanks. It was great being here. Thank you.
Thank you for
Bye.
tuning in for another episode of Pakistonomy. This was a great discussion. I hope you enjoyed it as well. If you do like our content, please subscribe to us on YouTube, like our channel on Facebook, and check us out on Twitter. We'll see you next week.